Like those of you who don't know me, I'm Amy Griffin. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of VASS, and we have Cindy Babb up there. And if you can see her, and she's on my top left corner. Cindy, many of you know, and for Jess, Jerry, and some of you new ones, that's you can see Cindy's face, so you'll see her in person at the spring conference. So welcome. This session today is sponsored by Participate Learning. I know Monica's here and ALP. I always like to give credit to them, and also the Department of Education, because the Department of Education did some cost sharing with us for of our VTLA sessions. And one of the topics they really wanted us to include, and we probably would have included it anyway, was this recruitment and retention and grow your own programs. And so we're pleased today to have with us. We have, and I'll spotlight them. We have David Donaldson he is the founder and managing partner of the National Grow Your Own Center. We have, and if I can, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm trying to maneuver my new Zoom who's updated. So we have also Dr. Carla Warren. She's a senior partner of the National Grow Your Own Center. We have Rob Gilstrap, the Assistant Superintendent of Educational Prep at the Department of Education. Is that the right title, Rob? Okay. And we have one of my favorite people, Shauna LeBlanc. She is the Director of Apprenticeships from the Department of Education. She, like Cindy, has all this energy she always brings to our meetings. So I'm now happy to turn this webinar over to them so they can provide you information and let it, what do we need to know about recruitment, retention, and grow your own programs, and what are things that we can be doing if we don't already have those things in place. So I'm going to turn it over to you all.
Well, good morning, everybody. As Dr. Griffith said, I'm Rob Gilstrap, Assistant Superintendent of what we call now Human Capital at the Department of Education. The title has changed a couple times over the course of the last couple of years. And you've already introduced all of us. I do want to say that it is a great honor to work with new superintendents. I did see that there was one, I didn't think he was new, but he's a good friend of ours, Dennis Carter. Good to see you, Dr. Carter, on the call. A very active superintendent when it comes to the Grow Your Own plan, and an ally of ours in trying to move this forward for the whole Commonwealth. So good to see you, Dr. Carter, on the call. Also, even though you already introduced David, I'm going to give him a little bit more. My title is Department of Human Capital, and before David was with the National Center for Grow Your Own, he was a human capital superintendent, assistant superintendent. I'm not sure what the titles were in Tennessee, but he did my work and more in Tennessee, and we definitely need to be thankful for that, because he has ushered in a new era for us for how to deal with recruitment and retention, and he's going to share with us to start off. I also just want to make sure I give a shout out to Carla Warren. She is a very good partner of ours. We meet weekly, and she makes us all look good in Virginia, so I appreciate her hard work, and she's from West Virginia, where she was in the State Department there prior to working with National Grow Your Own. And also, Shauna is my right-hand person and probably the brains in our team. So when she gets to present, I just want to definitely say I appreciate the hard work that National Grow Your Own has done on this project, as well as Shauna has done as well. I do want to turn it over to start things off. I'm going to go ahead and I don't think am I the one? Shauna, you're the one controlling it now, right? Okay, I was going to do it, but that's okay. Go ahead and go to the next slide real quick. So just to give a quick what we're going to do in this meeting, this is just our agenda. We've got our opening remarks and a little bit of background. David is probably going to go more into that when he talks about how Grow Your Own programs really kind of got started, and some of the strengths and weaknesses that we see in recruitment and retention across the country. And then we're going to focus a little bit more on Virginia. Some of you we've already talked to and met and have worked on these projects. Some of you just probably completely new to this concept. I will say that though we call it Grow Your Own and we call it teacher apprenticeships, we are really talking about the health and sustainability of your entire staff, not just teachers, but across your entire staff as a superintendent. So as we focus on teacher shortages across Virginia, we really also have bus driver shortages, instructional assistant shortages, superintendent shortages. We got shortages in all the key areas, not just teachers. And so that is one of the things that we will highlight, is that we're not just focusing on teachers, though we do feel teachers are the key for everything. So I'm going to turn things over to David for a few minutes. He can educate us all on the Grow Your Own model and some things that he did before he started this foundation. David, it's great to have you with us, and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Rob. Appreciate it. Thank you to Amy for the invitation. And I'd be remiss if I didn't specifically say thanks again to Rob, to Shauna, and to Dr. Lisa Coons for the partnership at Virginia Department of Ed. As Rob shared, I previously served as the Chief of Human Capital at Tennessee, but I really, really love the crowd here today because I'm a former teacher, former principal, and then led talent at a district level. So I was a principal and led talent for Detroit Public Schools in my hometown state of Michigan. And when I was in Tennessee, we worked with TOSS. That was the Superintendents Association there, and just loved getting to work directly with superintendents. I believe a State Department of Ed's job is to serve, and you all are doing incredible work. And we want to help, ensure that every child has not only the teacher they need, but deserve. And also thanks to my colleague, Dr. Carla Warren, for being here today too. With that said, look, you ask 100 different divisions what their definition of grow your own is, you usually get 100 different answers. So we like to kick things off by just giving what our definition is. Our definition, as you can see, is a clear articulated pathway for an aspiring educator to become a teacher for free and get paid to do so. And if you notice on there, we don't have an age on there. I could be talking about a 15-year-old, 25, 35, 45, 55, or 65-year-old. That's when I start sounding like an auctioneer. And we don't put an educational background on there. We could be talking about somebody with a master's, a bachelor's, an associate's, high school diploma, or they're in high school. The point is, a university University of Virginia or University of Richmond, they can train somebody on special ed. They can train somebody on math. But the one thing they can't train is train somebody to have a heart for kids. So we want divisions based on recommendations of your principals and current teachers, because it's the teachers who know who they want their colleagues to be. We want the teachers and the principals through employer-driven decisions to identify these are the people I want to become a teacher, whether it is the paraprofessional or the bus driver or the cafeteria worker, the parent, the guardian, the tutor, you name it. The person that has a heart for kids, and you meet them where they're at, regardless of age or educational background, to find a way to get them that degree or post-bac license so they can teach the students of Virginia. So we're a 501c3 nonprofit. We are honored to work with states, districts, and ed preps across the country in this space. And then we've worked on creating the national guideline standards for registered apprenticeship and all these things. But we'll get into the history of our work next. So back when I was in Tennessee, and I want to be very clear, our work looks different. We in every state we work in, because you have to recognize the cultural context and the different values and priorities that are in place. So what worked in Tennessee does not necessarily work in Virginia, just like it wouldn't necessarily work in California or Hawaii. But I've made a lot of mistakes. And so my main thing is to help people start off on second base instead of home plate. So what we were doing in Tennessee was we created pathways where we noticed that we had a lot of folks that, due to financial barriers, they weren't able to become a teacher. So how could we remove out-of-pocket costs? Second, over 20% of our vacancies were in special ed or ESL. So we had significant problems there. How could we address that? For us, we chose to require a dual certification. Other states have chosen to do bonus points if you're going to do special ed or other high need shortage areas. For us, we thought 15 weeks of student teaching wasn't enough time So we increased that length of time, whether if it was a post-bac program, had to be minimum 1 year, or we did 2 years if it was a bachelor's program, meaning somebody would have an associate's and their junior, senior year was spent doing more of that student teaching experience. Um, we have 42 different ed prep providers in Tennessee. And now that I don't work in government for the first time in 18 years, I can say this, which was not all ed prep providers are created equal. And so there's a difference in quality in this space. Also, something that when we think about diversity, that means different things in different places. I think one of the biggest rooms for improvement when it comes to diversity is how do we get more men into elementary schools? How do we get Tennessee's bordered by it was 7 states. Like, how do we get folks from different backgrounds? We have a lot of military bases in Tennessee. How do we get more military folks who have already committed to serving? How do we have them continue their service, potentially through teaching and other leadership opportunities? So that could look, that was a broad definition we had in that space. There we go. Okay. And so by doing this work, these were some of the things, as I mentioned, we were trying to accomplish, which was removing those out-of-pocket costs, addressing the SPED and ESL gaps that we had. And the one thing that I always like to point out, and I always say, feel free to laugh, but that was eliminate the concept of a first-year teacher. If we could have more time under a mentor who is the teacher of record, we thought that would better prepare folks to take over a classroom of their own one day. And then, Tennessee is a big state. And so I mentioned about the quality of ed prep providers, but there was also access issues, meaning you literally could be a district where the closest ed prep provider was over an hour away. So we would have what we called EPP deserts. How could we address that as well? And so we ran a competitive grant. And for us, we were able to get 65 districts. For context, that was about 50% of the state because there was 147 districts. Yet it represented well over 50% of the student population because we had the Chattanoogas, Knoxville's, Memphis, and Nashville's all participating. They partnered with 14 different ed prep partners. And so I mentioned we had 42 in the state. We were able to focus on, the grants were given towards 14 of those 42. So they went to some of their higher quality partners. And by having the state do the grant, we were actually able to negotiate with the universities and get costs significantly lowered in this place. It's the whole leveraging economies of scale play. And then specifically due to the increased time under a mentor teacher and the fact that they're paid, during that process because they're employed by the division, that's what led us into conversations with the U.S. Department of Labor around a registered apprenticeship concept. And so this is the official definition of a registered apprenticeship from the USDOL website. I will not bore you by reading this out word for word, but I will give you a second to take a look at it. And in talking with folks about this, they typically say, David, it kind of sounds like what it says is a registered apprenticeship is an apprenticeship that is registered, which is not the most helpful definition. So on the next slide, I believe we try to translate it into education speak, which is we say apprenticeship is the best of both worlds. It's completing that degree or licensure. So you're getting the time, in your coursework, your theory, all of those things. But what I believe, and this is my bias, more importantly, you're getting that hands-on extended experience under the mentor. But the biggest difference of all, because you could be like, well, that's kind of what we've been doing. Well, the biggest difference of all is the earn and learn aspect of this. So I want to be clear, a registered apprenticeship in and of itself does not necessarily mean it has to be free. The U.S. Department of Labor does not require it being free. Now, that's our personal philosophy, and I really admire that the leadership of Virginia Department of Ed has taken on that approach as well with their grant work. But it does mean at a minimum that you must be paid during that student teaching experience. And so that is where we are seeing divisions leverage the paraprofessional role typically to use while the states across the country are covering, tuition, books, and fees types of costs in this space. So it's a really, really cool to see, those financial barriers start to be addressed. Whenever people talk about, a teacher shortage, nobody wants to be a teacher. I strongly push back against that because we have plenty of examples of wait lists. When you remove those financial barriers, it's amazing, how folks want to become a teacher. Some of you may already have your own types of teacher residency or grow your own programs already in place. And so in those cases, we kind of viewed registered apprenticeship as phase two of those programs if they're already in place. And if not, it's great to see the Commonwealth of Virginia create, build off of existing programs and divisions while also expanding the opportunity for more divisions to participate. Because the long-term goal of registered apprenticeship is to help with either the expansion and or financial sustainability of these types of programs. And so in any registered apprenticeship, and look, I didn't even know what a registered apprenticeship was 4 years ago, never even heard of it. I knew what an apprenticeship was, but I didn't understand by making it registered in the whole US DOL definition. So a lot of these things, it's all just about translating them into things you do know. So in any registered apprenticeship, there's three main roles. There's the role of a sponsor, employer, related instruction provider. The sponsor, in the case of Virginia, will be the Virginia Department of Ed. They are the ones responsible for dotting I's and crossing T's, the compliance of a registered apprenticeship. The employer is you all, the superintendents in your divisions. You employ these apprentices, these teacher apprentices. The related instruction provider is just speak for the ed prep provider. Simple as that. Who is providing the training that leads to the degree or license? And then Virginia is a state apprenticeship agency state. Of the 50 states, about, I think 33 states, give or take, are state apprenticeship agency states. All that means is that the US DOL has given the state its own autonomy to approve programs. For other states, they have to go directly through the US DOL to get approved. And then on paper, key components of a registered apprenticeship say minimum of 2,000 hours of training, progressive wage schedule, related instruction, on-the-job competencies, an apprentice journey worker arrangement, and just a fair and transparent apprentice selection. I just want to hit on a couple of those. 2,000 hours doesn't typically make sense that's based on this traditional idea of 40 hours a week, 50 weeks out of, getting 2 weeks off of vacation total. In a lot of the places we work, that is represented by one school year. And different states and different US DOL people, depends what side of the bed they wake up, they interpret it differently sometimes. But for the most part, we've been able to get minimum of one school year, understanding that's the intent. That's the spirit of the law in this case. Progressive wage schedule, that's usually just your step and lane schedule, is used for an apprenticeship. Related instruction, similar to the key actor above, related instruction provider, that's just the coursework. And then Virginia will have its own on-the-job competencies. So what are the things that the apprentice should master over the length of the apprenticeship? That's evaluated by their mentor teacher, who's referred to in the next line as the journey worker. I personally think that's what makes or breaks the apprenticeship, is who is their mentor. It is a game changer who you get to learn under. And so that, I think, is probably the most important decision that any division can make, is how do you identify those journey workers, those mentor teachers, so that they're, building positive habits in these apprentices and not and addressing any bad habits before they fully develop. And so with that, I think turn it back over to Rob. So thanks for bearing with me, folks. I appreciate it.
Thanks, David. That was great. Great overview for us. As I begin this part, we're going to shift from national view and historical view, especially of Tennessee, to a little bit of historical view of Virginia, and of course, where we are at now and where we want to go, and how does this impact you all or apply to you. Some of the introductory things are things that David has already talked about. the extended clinical experience. When we talk about that, we're talking about a longer student teaching and observational period, a time where you get to get comfortable with being a teacher before you are the teacher alone in a room, staring back, staring at 30 pairs of eyes right back at you, going, teach me, teach me. It's also a big change here. We really are taking a community approach, and more than just the internal community, as uh, Dr. Carter would probably attest, we're also taking a regional community approach with this, where we are wanting, whereas possible, divisions to partner together to share the administrative parts of this, the knowledge that each division might have some special strengths or weaknesses that they could use support or grant support through. So when we talk about a community approach with the Virginia way of doing the Grow Your Own, we're talking about internally within the school, but also externally within the community and the neighboring communities. And right now we're in legislative season, and there's lots of work in the with the legislators trying to find how do we get more teachers into the classroom, and they're looking at ways to change regs and code. And I will say that in many cases, the way that the approach is we are going to lower what you're expected to know and do before you become a teacher to open that door for more people to get through there. And that's not exactly what this is all about. This is the opposite of that in some ways. We want you to go through the door knowing more and having experienced way more than you ever did in the traditional model. Most of you are somewhere around my age. I was an educator before I was a principal and before I was at the Department of Education, and I went through a teacher college. And when you go through a teacher college, you make sacrifices. There aren't a lot of there weren't, at least back when I went, there weren't a lot of scholarships for people to become teachers. You had to have a part-time job or go into great debt to become a teacher. And when you got to your student teaching stage, you had to sacrifice taking on more debt, not being able to work in order to do your student teaching. And we're trying to value educators like we've always said. I remember when I was growing up, people would say, we should pay teachers like we pay doctors and professional athletes because of the value they provide to our community. And so when we say that, but we don't do that in action, it's a mixed message. And so this is an attempt for us to actually do that and say that at the same time. Historically, Shauna, go on to the next one. If you just want to look at how we've gone about this in Virginia, go all the way back to November 2021, and you're looking at the U.S.'s Department of Labor steps here to actually say teachers can be an apprenticeable occupation, as David had mentioned. And then we get to Governor Youngkin in September of 2022, and he has his executive directive talking about the teacher shortages in Virginia to remove barriers and to focus on ways to provide a very high quality access to become a teacher in Virginia. We had some money back in July 2023, primarily ESSER money, which you all know that eventually had an end date. And we launched our Grow Your Own Apprenticeships last year, well, actually the year before. Then through September through October, we became the 27th state, joining almost every one of our states that surrounded us as a registered apprenticeship program. In February, we launched, and I think that Dr. Carter, you're one of those originals, the support an additional Grow Your Own Apprenticeship program at 1.5 million. And then we started to get a little nervous because we were hoping that our ESSER money would be able to be extended into this coming year. But we didn't want to wait on that. So we went ahead and applied for the SAFE grant, which only 3 departments of education, I think, in the country, no, it's 5. I always want to say 3, but there's 5 of us on our training, so I should know there's 5. So 5 states were able to get this funding. It's $6 million over 3 years, which guaranteed that we're able to sustain this for at least 3 years, giving our legislation and our administration chance to figure out a way to fund it beyond that. Also, give divisions a chance to find other sources of funding, which we'll talk about that towards the end. And September, we launched our first round of the competitive grants, which are about to be released maybe as early as tomorrow. If not, it'll be very early next week, those who have applied. And I'll just say, David said something about people don't want to become teachers, and he has proof that that's not true because we have waiting lines for that. I will say that we have evidence for that as well in Virginia. We launched this Grow Your Own, and we had approximately $2.5 million available for teacher apprenticeships, but we had well over $12 million in requests. So there is a big interest in doing this and doing this the way that we're trying to do it, even within our state. Shauna, go ahead. And so when we're talking about what are our objectives, we obviously want to build on the momentum of already strong school divisions that already are working to grow their entire division through teacher apprenticeships and other types of apprenticeships. As already mentioned, no cost here in Virginia is our goal. We want to make it a no cost pathway. Basically, give scholarships to everybody who wants to go into education wherever we can, as much as we can. That's our goal. Obviously, we don't have enough money to do that for every person, but we're working on that. Address critical vacancies. So when we focus on the pathway, we try to focus on areas that we have the shortages in. My favorite part, and David said his favorite part was the mentor part. My favorite part is that you earn and learn at the same time. I know that people in education preparation programs, candidates, they're already earning, but they're also earning and spending. And we want to learning and spending and not earning and learning. So we want to change that narrative. And then, of course, the topic of this meeting for us is retention and teacher effectiveness. So we are leaning heavily into strengthening the preparation of teachers in Virginia through this pathway. When you look at where David said they had 47 EPPs in Tennessee, I did not have any idea it was that many. That's a lot. We have quite a few here in Virginia, as you can see, and you can see that they kind of clump together either along I-95 or 64 or right next to big cities. We do have kind of a little bit of a desert in part of our states when it comes to education preparation programs. And of course, we are trying to address that with partnerships. We can't create new universities on our own, but we can always strengthen the ones that we have and see if we can find ways to leverage their strengths with other universities. This is just a quick look at where we have all of our education preparation programs. I think a lot of people don't realize how many programs we have in this state, which is quite a few. Shauna? So, as I said before, when I went to school, there was a way to do this. And you got the 4-year education program where you decided you wanted to be a teacher from the beginning. You did your first 2 years of general education, and then you started focusing on teacher education courses. You had to pay for everything. If you had to live on campus, that was an additional expense. And then at the very end, once you've received all the education that you had to prepare you, you got basically 10 weeks to be in front of students with some supervision, but there was actually a dedicated time where that supervision was actually taken away and you were in the room alone for a while. And good luck, and hopefully that doesn't scare you off. Our model extends that, so it's not so much so intense right at the end, and we try to provide great deal of internal supports for the school divisions as well, because if you have a mentor teacher who's not really trained to be a mentor teacher, that's not going to strengthen your pathway as well. Looking at where we are for completion rates, it's been fairly consistent across Virginia. I mean, we would love to see that number higher, and it is growing. That's one positive, that you can see a trend of growing, but we're sitting there somewhere between 4,000 and 5,000 almost every year of how many completers across the Commonwealth we have. Now, I'll say the number of completers we have does not meet the number of openings that we have. And so here's some of the vacancies that we have right here based on the last couple of years, and you can see the opposite trend, which is positive in a way, but it's also scary. When we were producing less teachers, we had a higher turnover rate, and now we're producing more, we have less of a need. And you can do the math there and see that 22 and 23 created a pretty big gulf in our state for teacher vacancies. And if you were to actually take the number of teachers and the number of highly qualified teachers that have a full license, this would be even more drastic due to the high provisional license pathway that we have here in Virginia, which this system, the Grow Your Own, tends to avoid provisional license because you will be qualified for a full license at the end of the program, not a provisional license. Little Shauna here as we get to see. So earn while you learn, as we've already said, embedded in your community. That's a key element to this program. We're looking for teachers, people who want to be teachers, who already love your community and love the kids in your community, have a tie in your community. We believe that if those are the people that you hire and grow in through this program, they are much more likely to stay with you through their whole career. There's almost like a sense of indebtedness that you've created. They don't necessarily owe you, but they feel like you've taken so much investment in them that they owe you the allegiance of staying with you in many cases. Of course, there's no guarantee of that, but I think that the momentum that we tried to build through this definitely creates a culture of this division made sacrifices for me and did things for me. I'm going to be invested in them. Strong partnerships between EPPs and school divisions. I can tell you, I recently came out of school divisions, and I didn't have a real strong partnership with the education preparation programs that surround us. The only one I felt like I even knew anybody that worked there was VCU. And we had teachers from all over the state, but I only knew the people at VCU because they were the only ones that would ever reach out to us. And of course, provide extensions of coursework. Go ahead, Shauna. So we're going to shift a little bit. I'm going to let Shauna do some of the talking. I feel like I'm an auctioneer, like David said, but not because of numbers, but because of speed of talk. I just want to make sure we get to the end of this and you all can ask questions. So Shauna's going to talk a little bit more about the specifics of how Virginia is doing this and where we are at and where you can get to. Shauna?
Rob, and thank you for calling out little Shauna. I'm very proud of her. I made her, and I'm just so glad that she made it in the PowerPoint. So like Rob said, I'm going to get a little bit more into the weeds of the components in Virginia. And I am going to try to go a little fast because I want to make sure I get through everything and leave enough time for questions. But happy to go back to these slides as well. So, like David and Rob said, there's for a registered apprenticeship, there's an on the job, which we call OJT. So I will say thank you, David, for going over. I always joke that when we're educators, we had to learn the licensure lingo. And then when I took this position, I had to learn all new language because apprenticeship has its own language and they do not always translate, even though they're the exact same thing. So on the job training, that is our clinical experience and our student teaching. So our program, we have the minimum of 2,000 hours, and we also have a mentor base. So we did for our smaller school divisions as the state sponsor, we did allow a 1-to-2 match a ratio. So one mentor could mentor 2 apprentices for our smaller school divisions who may not have the mentor capacity as the bigger ones. For our competencies, they are based on the guidelines for uniform performance standards and evaluation criteria for teachers. So that was intentional. We wanted our apprentice teachers and teacher candidates to know what they would be evaluated on as they come out. So to echo David, we wanted to eliminate that concept of a first year teacher. So to us, it made sense to have the same guidelines for the apprentice at the proficient level as a first year teacher and what teachers are evaluated on. So you see, we're trying to create some of this alignment and this these strings that are pulling into the real world. For our related technical instruction, that is our EPPs, or educator preparation programs. Now, our program right now is a little specific. We are focused associate's degree or 60 credit hours and getting them across the finish line to a bachelor's degree plus licensure. So we know, as Rob and I work in the Office of Human Capital here at the department, that there are alternate pathways for individuals who have a bachelor's degree. So to us, it made sense to focus on trying to get the individuals in the community who need that assistance. So I always think about the moms who maybe are paraprofessionals or they work in the cafeteria and they sent their kids to college, but they never finished their bachelor's degree because they were focused on their kids, or the moms who volunteer, or the dads who come in and same thing. So we're helping them get that bachelor's degree, which is that minimum qualification for licensure here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. So the progressive wage scale, like David said, this is pretty easy since we all have those step and ladders. But apprentices, as they earn, as they learn, they're earning a little bit more. So they should be paid somewhere higher than an instructional assistant, but somewhere below a first-year teacher. So you want to give them and reward them for gaining those skills and the competencies on the job. So how do our aspiring teachers participate? So we have 3 different entry levels here with our program. I'll talk a little bit more about our Teachers for Tomorrow partnership a little bit later, but our transition model, so that is what we've been talking about, of transitioning from a paraprofessional or another position within the school community into a teacher apprentice and then a first-year teacher or a teacher position. So we're thinking about that transition model of they were already in your school community and they're transitioning into this different position to become an educator. Our re-entry model. So we have lots and lots of data from our educator preparation programs where they say these student candidates came in and they were so interested in being a teacher. But as David and Rob emphasized, sometimes financial life happens, right? And you don't have the opportunity to basically volunteer and stop working and give up that part-time job. I know when I was in college, I had a part-time job and that was my saving grace. So we're thinking about engaging those students and those candidates that had to stop being a teacher and re-entry into this program so that we can actually pay them and they're earning while they're learning. So the one thing I really, really want to emphasize with our Grow Your Own, and I'm not like David, I'm not going to read this whole slide to you, but I wanted you to see that we are very focused on the partnership aspect of this. So we do not want educator preparation programs to come in and dictate the terms of this program. And we also don't want school divisions. It really should be a strong partnership where the school divisions are hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, as Dr. Coons likes to say, coming in to provide the support that is needed for your school community. So that's going to look a little different based on whether or not you're in Bath County or you're in Prince William County across the Commonwealth. And that support is going to look a little different. And we're okay with that. So one of our I pulled this from our sub-grant application, is our focus on our SAFE funding, which we'll talk about in just a second, is creating these partnerships and making sure that everyone is engaged in this and that the school divisions have a say and an equal say, as well as our EPP providers. So same thing here, you see, it's not all just on the educator preparation programs. Our school divisions as employers also have parts in the program implementation. So our state apprenticeship expansion funding, which we lovingly call the SAFE grant, we are very, very fortunate, like Rob said, that we were one of 5 states who applied for the competitive funding focused on teaching. And David, you might correct me, but I think we're one of 2 that had the whole 6 million focused on teaching. So we partnered with our state apprenticeship agency, which is the Department of Workforce Development and Advancement. They are called Virginia Works. If you are not familiar with them yet, it's because they're a newer agency and they split off from the Virginia Department of Labor about a year and a half ago, and they are focused on workforce development. So we partnered with them and they put in, there are 2 applications for SAFE funding. They put in for base funding, which is continued funding, and then Virginia Department of Education said, hey, we have a need for this. So we went in and we wrote in with the partnership of National Center for Grow Your Own, and we put in an application and we were awarded the full $6 million. And that is all going to education apprenticeships in 4 different funding streams. So our 4 different funding streams, we are looking at expanding our pre-apprenticeship route. So that's that Teachers for Tomorrow partnership that was referenced a couple of slides ago. So we have 1.6 million just over to go towards expanding that and creating a defined pathway into our teacher apprenticeship route. Same thing, we're looking at partnering with our community colleges and possibly creating a paraprofessional apprenticeship, because we know if we're pulling all of our paraprofessionals and we're making them teachers, that's going to create a vacuum. And we need to make sure we have a plan to make sure that our students who have a one-to-one match, they have a special education paraprofessional providing services, that we have high quality paraprofessionals and instructional assistants who are ready to step into those positions when that IA who is exceptional moves into the special educator role. Um, we also are looking at expanding this into principal apprenticeships. So right now we are very fortunate. We across the Commonwealth, I know this might not be the same for every school division on the call, where we do not have a shortage of administrators at the current moment. However, we do see that happening, and we want to make sure that we are investing in high quality administrators and its supervisions. And then, of course, we have our teacher apprenticeship funding, which is our 2.55 million to expand and implement our teacher apprenticeship program. So if you just a quick visual to show this kind of recaps exactly what I just said, but we really took the time to think about in our SAFE grant how we can align all of these programs to make a vertical alignment. So we really want to capture students and inspire them when they are in high school, and we want to capture them as teachers for tomorrow, and then possibly work them into a paraprofessional apprenticeship so we can pay for their associate's degree. Once they get that associate's degree, they can go into a teacher apprenticeship if they so choose, and we'll pay for their bachelor's degree. And once they're teacher of record, then they could be eligible possibly to be a principal apprenticeship. So we would help them pay for that master's degree. So it's really, we are really investing in our educators, and we are willing to put in the investment to pay for their education throughout this whole program.
Ron, I'm going to add just a second for that. This is not just random or, hey, let's just check the boxes. This is a philosophical decision at the state level that Dr. Coons has made to not just approach this from one target. This is to try to support all educators, all people that work with students from the beginning to the end, and try to grow our entire state, our Commonwealth, with better prepared educators, not just as teachers, but administrators and those that support teachers. I'd like to think of it this way: as if you, as a superintendent, could wave a magic wand and all of a sudden everybody in your division that works with students is one stage better. How much better would your entire division be if everybody in your division grew one level at a time? So just wanted to add that. It's something that I'm kind of passionate about, how we want to make sure that we don't just touch one area and overlook the others. Plus, if we were to not focus on paras, we eventually would deplete all the paras, and then we'd have a huge para shortage. So we need to have this a transitionary thing so that we're pulling people in as we pull them forward as well.
Thanks for that, Rob. So just also a visual, just recapping what I talked about with our program model. So right now for our registered teacher apprenticeship, we are taking other non-certified employees, existing paraprofessionals, career changers, volunteers, tutors, who have an associate's degree, and we're putting them into this funnel. And then through our registered teacher apprenticeship program, they will become they're employed as a full-time non-teacher of record, as well as taking coursework at their EPP. And then right now, because of our SAFE grant, our funding ends June 30th, 2027. So you'll see no later than that, they will be eligible to serve as teacher of record within Virginia. So just a quick looking ahead, I kind of mentioned some of these keywords, and I'll let Rob speak a little bit more because he is the one who came up with this. And when he said it, I was like, oh, that is genius. We have to capture that in a graphic. So go ahead, Rob.
So it's not genius, but it is nice. I will say that when we are thinking about this from like the big 3,000 view, people like to say, we're thinking about the teachers for tomorrow, the younger generation. We want to inspire them to become teachers. And that's where it starts, is we want to inspire younger people to want to work with students as they become adults. And that when someone says, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? The answer is not doctor, lawyer. It's teacher, principal, coach, whatever within a school division. And then we take those people that have been inspired and we equip them. And we do the equipping of them through the para growth and through the teacher growth, which the teacher growth is more of our support section of this, as we are trying to take teachers that are people very close to becoming teachers, support them with mentorships and an extended student teaching experience, as well as supporting them financially to get them to the finish line of a licensed teacher. And then because we have the principal apprenticeship as well, that's where we want to challenge. We want to challenge those teachers that are passionate about education, but want to lead a building, want to serve in a different capacity other than just teacher, maybe want to be a master teacher or be a lead teacher for a division. That's where we want the challenge. And as you see, it cycles itself back around. So once you become that master principal, that master teacher, you are pushing to the next, and we're going back to inspire.
Thanks, Rob. So ingredients for RTAP success. So RTAP is Registered Teacher Apprenticeship Program. I realize I used that abbreviation, but I didn't say it earlier. Apologies on that. So when we're looking for success, and I will say we're very, very fortunate in Virginia to have this. So you obviously have to have state level executive support, which we have with Governor Youngkin, which is wonderful. State agency leadership support, as Rob mentioned, we're very fortunate to have Dr. Coons, who understands this work and is passionate about this work. So school division leadership support. So our superintendents, everyone in this call, you are a key ingredient to the success of this program because we have to have your buy-in so that you understand the program and that you are passionate about it and see this as an investment in your school division. Educator preparation providers support. All 36 of our EPPs are currently very excited about this program, so we're really pleased about that. And then strong labor partnerships. So we do work really closely with Virginia Works, which is the Department of Workforce Development, and they are a key player in the success. So looking forward, as Rob mentioned, we have used several different types of federal grants and federal funds to sustain this program. But in order to be sustainable, we have to have a braided approach. So my word of the year last year, if you ever heard me on another presentation, was braided funding. So braided funding, I think, is going to carry over to 2025 as well. So we have to figure out how do we incorporate our local funds, our state funds, and our federal funds to sustain this program, which is what we are looking to do this year and figuring out how we can help you all approach this funding. So contact information, Rob and I are always available for any questions, but we wanted to, and I'm so happy we nailed it. We wanted to leave around 10 minutes for questions. So thank you all for your attention, and I will pass it over to Rob, and I will go off of share screen, but I'm happy to go back to any slides as needed.
Thank you, Shauna. And as I'm sure there are some of you that are like, yeah, I already knew some of that. And then there's some that might be saying, I didn't know that. We definitely wanted to have a safe space here with all of you to ask questions, make comments. We have a national expert on here, as well as some state representatives and your own director who is quite knowledgeable on this. So just kind of want to open it up for questions. If anyone has a question, just feel free to go ahead and go off mute, and we will go ahead and try it that way. Unless we get a whole bunch at the same time, then we'll do the hands.
And you all know this is a safe space to ask your questions. And like he said, you've got your national and your state experts right here. Let's see. I see a new message. Let me see.
Yep, I will put my email in the chat.
Y'all don't be shy.
Got a question in the chat. Can these funds be used to pay for companies that provide international teachers? So by that, I guess you mean to help them get their teaching credentials? Is that what you mean by used to pay or are you just saying contracting with an international group that brings in already licensed teachers? Which way were you going with your thought there?
So really any of the associated cost, because one of the things that, so we have used EPI for the last couple of years, and they have certainly have been a life. They have certainly filled a lot of vacancies that we've had. We would have a lot more than we currently do had we not enlisted their support. But one of the things that we're realizing is that the cost of partnering with them, we've already received projections for cost for the upcoming budget, and those costs continue to increase. So again, while we certainly value that partnership, it is expensive. And so I guess any associated cost with partnering with a company like that, I was just wondering if those funds could be used towards something like that.
See, that's kind of a tricky way to think about it. It's a grow your own. So by grow your own, we mean that it's people that are already working in your community, part of your school in some ways. And it's also the grow part. So if these are people that already have their credentials, then that really wouldn't be a growing, that'd just be a purchasing your own. So I would say that I'd have to see how the makeup goes to give you a solid answer. But I would say that if it's just paying a outside vendor to provide teachers from the outside, I don't think that that would be appropriate for this type of funding. I don't think that would fit within what we've presented to the federal government through the SAFE grant. But if they are people that are already employees of your school division that just need more training and they're going to remain with you, then I think that there could be a doorway for that. But if it's just hiring somebody from outside, then I think that my answer would be it's probably a no. But if you have a proposal for that, why don't you send it to me? I can run it by Dr. Coons and see what we think about that and give you some more feedback later on that. But if I'm just giving you an answer off the cuff, that's probably the way I would answer that. Shauna, do you have any thoughts on that as well?
Well, I would just add the only challenge with that is that they're only allowed to stay with us for a certain period of time. And so you can request extensions, that usually that's no more than 2 years. And so certainly while, it's a short-term, solution, certainly not something long-term. So just wanted to throw that out there.
Yeah. Sean, I'll let you go and I'll add another comment at the end.
Nope, I was just going to echo what you said, Rob. I think I agree. I don't think that would fall under the grow your own scope, but I do think there might be help with maybe what I've heard from other school divisions. And I know this is not what you said, Dr. Lyle, but I've heard there's a need for mentoring for international teachers and providing that type of scope. So I don't know that we could pay the program fees to help with the vendor, but I wonder if there's a way to help with the mentoring and supporting international teachers with their onboarding.
Yeah, that type of support would be incredible. Absolutely.
David, do you have any examples of that from other states that you can think of? I haven't heard another state trying to do that, but you have a much broader exposure. Have you heard of any other states doing that with any of their grow your own funding?
No, not with grow your own funding. And then I would just probably just add, if anything, I think it's more of an eligibility issue. It would not be eligible. States have definitely used J-1 visa teachers, of course, in many divisions and districts across the country, but not by registered apprenticeship because they are already certified. I would say, like, technically, but I want to recognize the superintendent's point that they are limited on potential renewal. They could be considered for a principal registered apprenticeship if they come in as a certified teacher, but you have the broader issue of can they continue to extend their work visas and issues like that. So that's a different conversation for a different day.
And I see a comment from Dennis Carter in here praising Shauna. And for you all here, Dennis Carter from Smith County is on here. He's attending it as a participant, but he also has started some work on this. So if you want to ask, I mean, I'm sure he would answer any question you might have from the perspective of a superintendent doing this work or starting this work or any other questions? And I will say too, we're getting ready to plan the our VASS spring conference and working. There's a superintendent on from each region that serves on the professional learning committee that helps come up with the topics. And one of the topics is principal pipeline, and that it's getting more and more difficult to find principals um, that end up high quality principals, I guess, principals that can do the job. So,
And Amy, if I could just add to that, and CFOs and directors of HR, and the list goes on and on and on.
yeah. So I think that's a great thing to see added on there. And that was news to me. So I think that's good because I think we're all finding that's at every level, it's more and more difficult to find people that are ready to do the job. I guess I could say you can find people, right? But it's just the people that can do the job. So, okay, any other questions? We got 3 minutes. You got the experts here. Well, I learned a lot because, I learned a lot, what the definition of grow your own is and the different aspects of it. Julia says, appreciate and thank you all for being here, but I'll wait a few more, give it a little bit more wait time.
These superintendents may be in their first or second year. If it's anything like VDOE, 6 months on the job is like 6 years on the job, and they probably don't feel as new as they have by this point in the year. But I just want to say, if you all do have questions that you think of later, feel free to reach out to Shauna or myself, and we will do the best we can to get you a solid answer and get back with you as quickly as possible. But we do appreciate the time that you've taken to listen to us, and we definitely want to be a support for you going forward.
Well, thank you, and I hope my slide is showing. I've got the new Zoom account or something that is awkward. Anyway, so make sure that you completed that link in the chat, or here's the QR code for it, just to let us know um, what you thought about this workshop and what some topics may be for a future session for first and second year superintendents, because you can see upcoming sessions February 13th. Second year superintendents, there's a session on crisis management and preparedness with Lori Mueller from the Donovan Group and for Shelley Evers from DCJS. First year superintendents, if that topic also is something you're interested in, you're welcome to join year 2. Just let me know. And then year 1, you're from 1 to 2 p.m. on developing instructional strategy, instructional leaders. That's what TNTP. I'm just learning about them through DOE, so I'm learning along with you. March 17th, we have a session on your calendar, but there's no topic yet because I want to get your input to know what you want to learn more about. So let me know in this survey what you want to learn more about. And then we're in person on April 28th in Roanoke for our spring conference. So please fill out that survey, and these are on your calendar. But I just now want to thank David and Carla and Shauna and Rob for your time and the information. I know I learned a lot, so I feel like I'm now versed in the topic. And I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you, everybody.